I'll show you now how this incident handling policy looks like and how to fill it out to be compliant with DORA EU cybersecurity regulation. Now, this document is important because DORA dedicates articles 17, 18 and 19 for incident management and requires this kind of a policy. But there is also this CDR 2024-1772, which is wholly dedicated towards incident management, and also one article in CDR 2024-1774. So lots of requirements for incident handling, but also on the practical side, if you don't have a clear process set up before an incident happens, then you'll have a very hard time handling such an incident, because once this happens, you won't have time to think through what is the best way to manage incidents. Okay, I'm showing you now this incident handling policy template from Advisera's DORA documentation toolkit. So here on the first page you have company logo, company name, and some general information about the document. So code version, date of version, author, approver, confidentiality level. And then on the second page you have change history, where you basically follow up on all the changes in the document throughout various dates. And then a table of contents, and then starts the main part of the document. Now I'll come back to this main part in a minute. Let me first explain you how the document is structured. So table of contents. So purpose, scope and users. So in the purpose you define what is the main, I would say, intent of this document, scope, to which elements or processes in the company it applies to, and who needs to read the document. Reference documents, this is where you refer to DORA, to relevant CDR, but also to 27001 or some other cybersecurity standards. Then some basic definitions, and then you define how the incidents are handled within your company. So first of all, inputs, so basically threat intelligence, vulnerabilities, so where do you actually get all this information, receipt and the classification of threats, weaknesses, events and incidents. So who is actually notifying about incidents, who is receiving these notifications, and then what this person needs to do with them. Classification and notification, so basically what are the criteria for classifying incidents as minor or major. Treatment process for security threats, weaknesses or events, so what the company needs to do with these events that are still not incidents. Then how the company needs to treat minor incidents, so is this handled through this policy, or you have a separate procedure. Treating major incidents, this is typically done through a separate incident response plan, which is a part of a business continuity, so you normally refer to this other document. Then learning from incidents, so how you do this post-incident reviews, and basically what is the process, how you do this reporting. Information received from authorities, so typically these companies from financial sector will communicate with CSIRTs, and basically when they receive any information from these authorities, then how to handle this information, who is in charge and so on. Disciplinary actions, so how do you formalize this disciplinary action if an employee has caused some incident, especially if this is a larger incident. How do you collect evidence so that it's acceptable, let's say, for some legal proceedings. And training and awareness, so how do you train your people, how do you make them aware about this incident notifications and so on. And then the section about the reporting of major incidents towards authorities, but also towards clients that are affected. Validity and document management, so who is in charge, who is the owner of this document, how often it needs to be reviewed, and some appendices that you might have to this policy. Okay, now let's see the main part of the document, purpose, scope and users. You will notice that this is basically already pre-filled, and where you see these square brackets, this is where you have to enter some specific information for your company. So let's say that the company name is, I don't know, Test Incorporated, and then users of this document are all employees, again, of this same company. I'll show you actually how to speed up the writing of this information that is being repeated, but I'll do it in the second part of the video. Okay, so reference documents, here you have the reference to DORA, and here actually you will see in these comments that you also have the direct link towards all these regulations that are mentioned here, so you can open up and see the full text here. So this CDR, you have the link here, this one CDR, also the link here, and so on. Definitions, so some most important definitions that are taken from DORA. So what is the ICT related incident, what is the major incident, minor, significant cyber threat, and so on. And then comes this part where you actually start writing the main part of the document. So cyber threats are detected and monitored through the threat intelligence procedure. Of course, you can have some other document where you have some other name. So let's say this is a threat intelligence, I don't know, protocol. And of course, you simply adapt the document to whatever you see fit. Anomalous activities detected through the logging and the monitoring procedure, through vulnerability and patch management procedure, so these kind of things. Then you will see these square brackets with these specific roles. So job title for managing security incidents. And here you also have the suggestion on who this might be. So this could be the person person in charge of overall security or some specialized role, let's say incident responder, crisis manager. Let's see that you actually have the role which is called, let's say, incident manager, and you simply enter it here. And then you also here have suggestions on the explanations of particular things. So what are early warning indicators, and then you have some suggestions here. And then here, receipt of and classification of threats, weaknesses, events, and incidents. So basically every employee has to notify. And then here you have this function for receiving security weaknesses and incidents. Again, you have to fill out what is specific for your company, and then how you need to notify this. Again, here is a comment which suggests you what would be the way to notify these incidents, let's say help desk, messaging applications, and so on. And then classification and notification, so how you classify. And here are all the various criteria that came actually through CDRs. And actually here in the comments you have quoted these CDRs. So the number and relevance of clients, so basically CDR 2024-1772 says all of these things that you have to take into account. And as you move on, you will see all the references to these CDRs. And yeah, as you move on, you will have to fill out the rest of the document. So the information about security threats, weaknesses, events, and incidents must be forwarded to job title for managing security incidents. And this is how you fill out the document. You simply go through it. Since most of the text is already written, you have to adapt it for your specific processes, for your specific people, for your specific technology. Now, the most important decisions in this document are not really going to be for these classification levels, because they're already prescribed by this CDR 1772. So the biggest decisions will be around how to define the process of responding to an incident, and also what happens after an incident. And for that purpose, the person in charge of writing this document, and usually this is a Chief Information Security Officer, has to propose this process to other relevant stakeholders in the company, ranging from IT department, human resources department, legal department, and also all the people who are in charge of other operational departments within the company. Because the idea here is really how to handle incidents in the most efficient and most effective way, so that it operationally makes sense from the way the company is already organized, because this depends obviously on the existing processes within the company. So in any case, there will be lots of negotiations, I would say, until this is agreed. And to reach this kind of a consensus, it's good to educate all of these involved people around what are the good practices for incident management, and of course what are DORA requirements in this respect. And to help you speed up the writing of this document, I'll show you now how this document wizard from DORA documentation toolkit works. This is how this DORA documentation toolkit application looks like once you log in. And when you scroll down here to this folder 11, incident and threat management and reporting, you will see several documents. The first one is incident handling policy. When you click on it, you actually enter into this wizard. Now, the purpose of this wizard is to speed up the writing of all the documents from the toolkit, and in this particular case, this is the incident handling policy. And you will see a set of questions here. And for example, what is the name of the person to approve this document? John Smith. What is the confidentiality level of this document? Internal rules. So you'll notice here some of these fields are already pre-filled, and this is because I used this same wizard for some other documents from this toolkit, and then the wizard actually remembered what I entered, and then it suggests the most likely answers for these questions that are used in the company. So for example, yeah, I leave it like this. Let's say for the next step, so who is in charge of managing security incidents? And you have some suggestions here on who this might be. Let's say that this is a crisis manager, and you simply move on. Receipt and classification of threats, weaknesses, events, and so who's in charge of receiving this information? Let's say security department. Let's say this is, I don't know, security support, something like this. Let's move on. Let's leave it like this. Let's leave it like this. Who is the owner? Fine. Who is the job title to approve? Fine. And when you click download, you will see in a couple of seconds that the document is ready for download. So when I open it, you will notice that this document is basically the same as the one that I've shown you before, but this one is already pre-filled through the wizard. So you see here this logo, which I already uploaded previously when I created some other documents. You see the company name is already pre-filled here. So approver, John Smith, entered through the wizard. Confidentiality level also came through the wizard. You see this same information here in the header. When we move on, you will see, yeah, so here you see this company name is entered here, also here, all came through the wizard. And yeah, so incident management, let's see, yeah, crisis manager. So as you see, actually the wizard automatically inserted this job title that I entered through the wizard. And yeah, so here all the incidents are reported to this security support that I entered through the wizard. Let's see further, again, all the incidents are forwarded to crisis manager and so on. So basically, as you can see, whenever some information is being repeated, either from some previous documents or within these documents, then it's actually automatically handled through the wizard, and this is how it speeds up the writing of these DORA documents. Hope this was helpful, and to see this incident handling policy for yourself, sign up for a free trial of DORA documentation toolkit. Click the link in the description below, and you'll be able to see a free demo of this document, but also of other documents from this toolkit, and you'll also be able to try how this document wizard works. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up, and you can also subscribe to my YouTube channel not to miss any of my new videos, and I publish videos every week. Thanks for watching!